So I picked this catalogue up from the Leicester Vintage Toy Store, and I mean, it's from an era that is only just after I was born. This was in 1976 this came out, and Dinky was kind of merging, I think, with Meccano at the time. So there's a certain amount of crossover in this little catalogue, but just looking at this front page here, I mean, you know, it's 5p. You can't. I don't think you can actually buy anything for 5p anymore, like at all. Back then, 5p actually was an amount that you could buy stuff with. I mean, it's nearly 50 years ago. That's quite scary, isn't it? Yeah, that is quite scary. Nearly 50 years ago. But on the front page here, you can see that they had one of the very first Star Trek licenses. And this was a really good Enterprise. And I remember this Enterprise. I had this Enterprise. I do not have it anymore. I have seen it, not recently, but I have seen an example of it in the local retro toy store. And I remember having the discs quite clearly. And I remember it having this rather excellent shuttle bay for the Galileo shuttlecraft that it comes with. They just sort of slotted up into its belly. And I know it's not technically the right place for it, but nevertheless, it's a good representation, and it was solid because these are all metal. You know, these are metal models for the most part. So they were really durable, and that's why they go down the years, basically, you know, for obvious reasons. So this was catalogue number 12. I also have catalogue number 13, which I'll do a separate video on. And it's quite interesting because the tone, if that's the right word for it, the tone of 13 is quite different to the tone of this one. So I'm just going to sort of scroll through the catalogue as I'm looking at this and give a bit of a running commentary. So on the first double spread, you've got the Space 1999 Eagles, both of which I had, both of which I loved, both of which I shoved into fires with their noses, because their noses are die cast, to simulate re-entry. I kid you not. But I definitely had the Eagle Freighter. I still have an Eagle Transporter, which is indeed Dinky Toys 359, as indicated in this catalogue page. And this I actually find quite a useful reference, because I can see on here what the stickers are supposed to look like, and the ones that I'm lacking from my version of it. So it's quite a helpful thing to have this as a reference point if you're not sure whether or not you've got the real thing. Interestingly, you'll see in this picture the jets, the exhausts are red plastic. They're not on my version of it, but they weren't in some versions of it, the earliest versions. So this may be a slightly later version compared to the one that I've got. But the level of detail is fascinating looking at this on a sort of full screen version. So it's telling you exactly how long each of the models are. So they're both 222 millimeters. So it's very precise. They're very, very clear on exactly what it is you're going to get if you choose to buy one of these, which I think is rather lovely. And the USS Enterprise is 234 millimeters. Apparently it fires photon torpedoes. Now, personally, I think that's a bit of a health and safety issue. I think it's far more likely that it fires plastic discs, personally, but, you know, that's just me. And apparently the doors open for access to shuttlecraft. So, I love the fact that the tagline is, "Through the barriers of space and time, Dinky blasts onto your TV screen." Well, in fairness, Dinky, I think the TV screen came first, but I see what you're doing there. Okay. All very properly licensed and everything. It's all very, very above board. So there's those two, or those three. And then we move on to more Gerry Anderson inspired models. So we've got an armoured command car, which again is very detailed in its description. It says, tracer projector and super radar, powered by own clockwork motor. Road wheels not mechanically driven. But I'm assuming that means that when you push it along, the radar dish turns, basically, and you know that's kind of something sparkles out the front apparently as well. That must be what happens. Then we've also on the same page we've got the Shadow 2 sort of missile launching tracked vehicle, which I always end up not getting because I end up getting something that's very similar to it, which isn't it. And that was the, is it the Master King's one? Something like that. There's also, however, the UFO Shadow Interceptor there, which is fairly unmistakable. And I did have one of those back in the day. Don't have it anymore. Again, you see them around from time to time. Had this huge, and apparently it's a cap-fired rocket, according to the next page, which is interesting. Because I didn't realise you could actually use caps in conjunction with it at all. But that's really interesting. No idea. Now, I see the SPVs from Captain Scarlet quite a lot. I also see these blue Thunderbirds quite a lot. And why you get a blue Thunderbird 2, I don't understand why they chose to paint it that colour when they had green available for Shadow vehicles. I don't get that. The Shadow vehicles are from UFO, by the way. If you're not familiar with this, another Gerry Anderson live action show. Obviously, the Fab 1 is very much the Fab 1, as is Thunderbird 4. But Thunderbird 2, I've seen them around. I've never picked one up because I always thought it was just odd that it would be blue. I don't know why they went for that, but they did. So, 153mm for Thunderbird 2, 147 for Fab 1, about the same for the Shadow 2 Mobile, and the UFO Interceptor is a bit longer at 194mm. Probably that includes the rocket on the front, I would imagine. Now we get into the really sort of interesting ones, because Dinky did this whole range of other stuff. For me, it was the science fiction stuff that I was interested in. But you can see here that, you know, they're probably doing all these very sort of famous agricultural stuff from that sort of era. And, you know, Cinderella's coach, which is really interesting because they're not kind of, I mean, you know, these days it would be a faux pas to say they're for girls, but obviously, you know, at that point in time it would have been aimed at girls. But so to see that in this sort of catalogue, along with the war machines, is quite interesting, actually. So we've got lots of sort of generic cars here, and I'm trying to think if I ever had any of them. The sort of the Ferraris look vaguely familiar, but I couldn't swear to it. I couldn't swear to owning any of those, I don't think. Even the Range Rover looks vaguely familiar, actually. But you can see, you know, they did put a lot of effort into it. They've got all sort of, you know, they've got opening bonnets, opening doors, opening boots. You know, it's all good stuff. We've got a little beach buggy. That reminds me of a TV show for kids, that beach buggy. Not quite sure which one. Got an old Triumph. And then various sort of police vehicles and ambulance vehicles. The ambulance vehicle on the far right looks a little bit like Ecto 1, but it can't possibly be that, surely. Can it? I'll leave that to you in the comments if you want to tell me that is an Ecto 1. I'll be impressed with them. Because that was foresight on their part. We've got the AA, brilliant. No one outside the UK who knows who the AA is or are. Got a Bedford Royal Mail vans. Okay, yeah. Ford Transit van, obviously. Motorway services. Ford Transit fire appliance. I feel like I had one of the fire engines, but I couldn't swear to it. So now we've got some buses, obviously Routemaster bus, inevitable. Taxi, London Taxi, also inevitable for a British firm of the day. Yep. Okay. Powerful working shovel action. Here come the workers building motorways out of mud. Okay. Rah rah motorway building. Cool. But again, you know, they're all really, I bet you could find these really easily if you were interested. These are the sort of things I'm sure are eminently collectible if you're going for a sort of a full Dinky spread. Even that SO tank looks vaguely familiar. It's funny, isn't it? I mean, you know, you don't know what just sort of found its way into your toy basket over time, and you have these sort of dim memories of, but it does ring a vague bell. Now, I don't think I ever got into sort of the battle ones, but these are clearly these are actually German vehicles and sort of self-propelled mortars and that sort of stuff. It's, you know, you see, I just don't know whether this would happen these days. You know, do we still do this sort of thing? I don't know if we do. Old Land Rover. with just sort of guns, proper guns, and all sorts of stuff. Howitzers, parachuting, mook. Those amphibious vehicles look vaguely familiar. The 682 is looking at the stalwart load carrier. I think maybe it just reminds me of the Shadow Mobile a little bit. 5 mighty rocket weapons. I just love it. It's because it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's got 5 mighty rocket weapons. It's like honesty in advertising. This page is actually quite interesting because this gives you a full breakdown of the catalogue. So if you're at all interested in trying to figure out whether or not you've got, you know, all the stuff from that particular year, then this is clearly a really handy reference point. So I'll just hang around on these pages for a little bit in case anyone wants to pause it. And this is essentially the centre of the booklet as well, so it's quite canny on their part. You could open it up here and take these pages out, and you'd have a really quick reference guide to everything that they were doing at that point, so that's quite clever. Now, these Mogul steel tools, we'll get to those later in the catalogue, but they're quite interesting, and I think that's where the Meccano crossover starts to come into it. So we've got a few more tanks and stuff here as well. Chieftain tank, commando jeep, armoured patrol car apparently. And then again various other tanky bits, fire shells, leopard recovery tank. It's very clever because I mean you could properly sort of, you know, you could clearly kind of role play it given the sheer range of different sort of vehicles that they're doing. So I guess if it's kind of aimed at that sort of, you know, almost like a battle recreation market, I guess. I don't know. I love the set to conquer the cruel sea. This is the boat section, missile firing boats. They run along on concealed wheels. Yes, clever. But they're quite cool as well, you know, some missile boats and corvettes, and yeah, it's just that it's the attention to detail that I like, I think, more than anything else. You can tell they've just really taken care with it. And now we're in Defence of the Sky. With dropping cap firing bomb. They love their caps, which aren't included, incidentally. So we've got, you know, Luftwaffe Junkers. We've got Spitfire Mark IIs. We've got more civilian craft. But I bet bottom dollar these still survive in really good shape because they were so metal. Motor-driven propellers. Interesting. Oh, battery not included, right, so they were actually battery-driven, these. You actually had battery-driven propellers. That's awesome. A Bell police helicopter, Sea King helicopter. Of course, still around. The more things change, the more they stay the same and all that good stuff. Phantom, Hawker Harrier. 2-in-1 for even greater playing power. Well, yes, value for money and all that. It's all good. And talking of value for money, I mean, it's worth remembering that these loose are probably a lot cheaper than they are in their original boxes. So, you know, if you want your kids to have something to play with, you can do worse than picking up some of these old toys. I can't swear to you that they won't be made out of lead in some way, shape or form, but, you know, they will last. And they will have lasted. Now, these are interesting. I didn't know these existed, but apparently they had dinky kits as well. And these are actually metal kits, apparently, and you paint them yourself, and the paints are included, apparently. Brush isn't included, but the paints are. So that's nice of them. So this is where we start moving out, we go from dinky military kits on the left-hand side of the page into Prima Meccano, a great toy for 2 to 6 year olds, apparently. So these are obviously sort of lead-ins to real metal Meccano, but these are starting out with plastic ones. Meccano multi-kit. Meccano as versatile as you. So it's got, and this is the first time we actually see children in this catalogue, but I'll come back to that on the next catalogue. So motorised Meccano. Okay. I never really had Meccano. I think some friends of mine did. I remember, you know, I knew of it, but I didn't actually own it. I think that sort of escaped me. But, you know, sort of full working models, weight-driven, pendulum controlled. So it's all, you know, it's all really interesting stuff. Then this Mogul stuff, and this kind of reminds me of Tonka. But apparently this is all sort of steel, so this is really sort of properly robust stuff that was designed to last. And it's not, but it's not, that's not a name I've heard of before at all before I opened up this catalogue. So I invite you to obviously leave comments if you know vastly more than I do, which won't be difficult. Another Mogul. And I think that's about your lot. I think the only other shot is one of the back where they put the they've got an eagle on the back and a couple of more sort of random stuff in a boat. And it's quite interesting because there's a disclaimer on the back here. Meccano Limited reserve the right to alter the colours and specification of its products without prior notification. So basically what they're saying is what you see in the catalogue may not be what's in the shops, which is eminently sensible of them. But it's copyright 1976 Meccano Limited, Liverpool. And I suspect that Meccano was probably, I can't remember if it was, I think it was the Dinky arm of Meccano that was coming to its end here. Maybe not Meccano itself, but the Dinky aspect of it was getting towards the end of its life with these sorts of models. So it'll be interesting to see what's in the next catalogue, because it comes after this one. Just to see kind of what's left in terms of what's in that particular catalogue, and whether or not I think it's the last one, because I've got one of the toys sat on my windowsill here that was maybe one of the last ones they produced, but I haven't seen that in these catalogues yet, so maybe it'll be in the next one. But I thought you find that of interest for the historical record, if nothing else. I've just scanned those in, so sort of bit by bit. So in theory, that is every page from that catalogue, should you want it as a reference for any reason. So I hope that's been of use, and I will scan the next one in due course. Cheers for now.